Hi, everyone. Today's episode is going to be about my journey getting an eight. Hi, everyone. Today's episode is going to be about my journey receiving an ADHD diagnosis. For me, that happened in adulthood. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about what was going on in my life, how I was able to get that diagnosis. Then, I'll talk a little bit about some tips and tricks that I have used to get back aligned when I have ADHD symptoms that are preventing me from doing the things successfully that I'd like to do. And then I'll talk a little bit about ADHD in terms of the journey to get a diagnosis or some things that you might want to reference if you have questions about yourself. So, to start, when I was a kid, I never really struggled with mental health or in school. I really didn't have challenges there. And so, even the concept of me having ADHD was never like a part of conversation growing up. And I think now in 2026, many people know more about ADHD and what misconceptions we had in the 90s about it being, all about attention and focus and being able to sit in class and pay attention. A lot of what was known as ADHD or attention deficit back in the day was boys who had a hard time focusing. And that was kind of the blanket of how everyone understood what it is. And it's such a wide range. Not only does it look different in different people, but there's actually different types of ADHD, and your brain can process things differently depending on the type. So, one prime example is some people with ADHD constantly need background noise, whether it's like music or a TV show or something. Like they need things playing. They want that auditory like stimulation. And for other people, they need silence to get things done. Like if they're writing an email or something, it needs to be silent. So those are prime examples of like opposite ends of the spectrum and how ADHD can be different in different people's brain. So for me personally, I was in my 30s. I had known about my bipolar disorder for about, I want to say maybe 3 years almost at this time. And I had been working remotely for a while, but post pandemic for about 2 years, I think. And things at work were kind of starting to feel stressful and slip through the cracks. And I was noticing that I was dropping the ball, whether it was forgetting something that I had agreed to do or, missing deadlines, which is very rare for me. And so I knew things were not good. And I reached out to some of my colleagues that I worked closely with on different projects and initiatives and asked them their opinion. Like, are you noticing anything? What is your point of view on what's been going on? Because I don't feel like it's been going good from my perspective. I don't feel like my performance has been good. And they shared really interesting stuff. Some of the biggest things being that a lot of times in meetings, it had felt recently like I was doing multiple things at once. So maybe I would be in a call, but I'm also responding to a Slack message or an email. And also that I was becoming irritable when like pressed or asked about things that were on my plate. And that totally was a defense mechanism when I would be alerted to the fact that I had something due and it wasn't done. And so it was very interesting and enlightening. I was very grateful that these colleagues shared with me what seemed different from working with me for years. And I went to my therapist first, and right away she said, "Well, Emily, I think you have ADHD, and now's maybe a good time to learn more about it and treat it." And I'm smiling and laughing a little bit because her and my psychiatrist said they knew I had ADHD from very early on working with me, but they didn't want to throw another diagnosis at me because I took my bipolar disorder diagnosis so well and I was processing that so well that they didn't want to like overwhelm and shock the system. But ironically enough, some of the things that I had been attributing to bipolar disorder were actually my ADHD. So my therapist gave me a test to do and then told me to tell my psychiatrist. And my psychiatrist right away said, great, we can start you on medication. Now, the difference for me is I already had an established psychiatrist that had been writing me prescriptions for years. So she felt comfortable doing a short evaluation, giving me this additional diagnosis, and letting me try medication. So I started first with Vyvanse, and that didn't work that well for me. It kind of left me like stimulated at night when I needed to start winding down to get good sleep. And then I tried other medications and found one that worked for me, but I like to put an asterisk on this because if you're feeling like you have ADHD or exploring an ADHD diagnosis, it can sometimes be a very long and tiring process if you're not already established with a psychiatrist. So if you're having those inclinations, I would do a little research in your area for people with adult ADHD practice or focus and connect with them, because sometimes you can do a few hour evaluation and kind of get the process moving right away. And sometimes it's a more delayed or prolonged start. And then if you're being treated for it with stimulant medication, you have to see your prescriber once a month, which is kind of an annoying thing about stimulants. But that is kind of the basics of how that system works. And sometimes it can take a while to get in to see a doctor to then get that diagnosis. So if you're wondering about that, maybe just start researching adult ADHD in your area. The other thing I would say is there's a ton of resources where you can learn about the different types of ADHD and maybe see if it aligns with what you're experiencing. Jessica McCabe is an amazing author and content creator who has ADHD and talks about ADHD. Check out her YouTube channel because she does tons of videos on all kinds of ADHD accommodations that might be helpful for you. And she also talks about the different versions of ADHD and how our brain works and processes things differently. Her book is called How to ADHD. It's so good. I'll put it in the description for this episode. But you can also go on social media and find different ADHD creators. If you're an adult male, if you're an adult female, if you were diagnosed when you were younger, there's all different communities that talk about the different types of ADHD and the different identities that kind of go along with ADHD. So I highly recommend that. But then once I got this diagnosis, it's not like the medication fixed everything. I mean, the medication helps a lot. But the reality is I needed to go back to the basics when it comes to how I was managing my workload, my deadlines, all of that. And so I needed to go back to blocking time on my calendar for specific projects or tasks that I needed to work on. I needed to go back to just doing one thing when I'm in a meeting and letting all of the messages and emails wait until I'm done. And I also needed to get back to a written to-do list system. So a to-do list that is urgent, time sensitive, needs to be done by X date, and then a weekly to-do list that I can kind of action on. And something I learned about myself personally with ADHD is if a to-do item or task is too large, I'll sometimes feel overwhelmed and delay getting started. But if I break it down into a smaller task, I'll often get started and get the momentum to finish it. So a prime example is when I record these. I record them, and then in an ideal scenario, I'm able to edit and upload them pretty quickly thereafter or schedule them for the future. But sometimes the idea of recording, editing, and uploading is massive. So instead I say, okay, I'm just going to record. And then if I've recorded some and I need to get going, instead of saying, okay, I'm going to get that one on YouTube and do the blog and do the whatever, I start by saying, okay, I'm going to transcribe that. And then I'm going to move to the next step. So sometimes breaking down the tasks can help a lot with ADHD to get you started. And then one of the other things about ADHD that I learned from someone else that I think is helpful, whether you have ADHD or not, is do the hardest task first. So if there's something on your to-do list and you've just been dreading it or putting it off or whatever, have that be your first thing in the morning tomorrow. Because I promise not only will it feel amazing to check it off your list, but it also gives you that momentum to keep going. It's like that dopamine boost. I'm going to do a lot more videos about ADHD, particularly ADHD in entrepreneurship and in the work context. So if you have questions or your own personal experiences that you think we should dig into, leave a comment or email me, emily@bipolarbalance.com. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm just kind of learning about adult ADHD as well, and ADHD in women in particular. So I'll still see reels sometimes on social media and think, wow, yeah, that aligns with my experience too. So it's fun to explore a little more. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming, or like you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, if I had known sooner. But I've found that it's much better to focus on like now you know, and little tools or hacks that it might help you with in the future. I'll also say as a closing, ADHD is a superpower in my opinion. I know that I can get so much done in a short amount of time. And when I'm focused, I actually am really good at executive function, which is like kind of the crux of struggles of ADHD. But when it comes to like a long list and a limited time to do things, I'm very good at figuring out my order of operations and how to get it done. So if you have ADHD and you feel like it's a negative, try to also give yourself some grace and look at the things about it that are maybe positive or like make you better at certain things than other people. Because I do think that it has a superpower element to it. I'm glad you're here. I want to chat with you more, so don't be shy. Leave a comment, subscribe, share it with someone that you know. And if there's something I'm doing that I should do more of or that you don't like, let me know that too. All right. Thanks for listening.